Welcome to the Ed Gap Evolution Podcast. I'm your host, Mariah Phillips. You can call me Mariah because that's my name, and I'm thrilled to have you on this journey with me and all of the spectacular guests who jump on the podcast to give you more options for educating children so that children have more options for building a magnificent future. The Ed Gap Evolution Podcast is a digital community where parents, educators, and innovators drop the details on how they are using their lives to help children explore the vastness of education beyond the textbook so that we can close America's education gap together. And just in case you didn't get the memo, producing a podcast is a whole lot of work. We're talking schedule coordination, production, the list goes on and on. So in return for bringing you this show every week, we just ask that you always find a way to share and use what you learn on the podcast to enrich children and families everywhere. Alrighty, without further ado, come along with me to meet our very next guest. Today, we're speaking with Tonee Lawson, who is the founder of the Be Organization, a nonprofit based in Baltimore, Maryland, that encourages and nurtures youth to live above socially imposed limitations and develop their character, talents, and leadership skills, which allows them to go beyond a dream and achieve remarkable excellence. We'll dive into the good work happening at the Be Org in just a minute. But first, Tonee, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I'm so excited for folks to just get this information about what you're doing for children and families and truly for the world. And we can't wait to hear more about your personal story and exactly how the Be Org came to be. But I want to rewind a bit to your mission statement that I just read in the intro. What are socially imposed limitations and how do they harm youth?
Yeah, so socially imposed limitations are any environmental external factors that inhibit you from achieving success. And so sometimes they are, most of the time, they're things that they can't control, systemic things that have been put in place for years and years, and just in general, things that our youth struggle with day to day. So just lack of supports in the education space or lack of resources available to them and their families that prohibit their families from obtaining housing or other things that impact their health that are just systemic and above their own control.
I feel like, when it comes to education, sometimes it is something that folks can overlook. We can want to help children as much as we can, but if we're not talking about the environment and the things that are contributing to their everyday life, then are we really talking about a well-rounded educational experience or just a being experience as a human being?
Yeah, for sure. They're just things like that are above them, things that they can't control, but ultimately really limit their success and limit their ability to stay focused and just live a well-rounded life.
Absolutely. And speaking of success and staying focused, you are no stranger to staying focused because of all the great things that are happening with the organization and in your life beyond that. So could you tell listeners more about you, where you're from? Like, who's Tonee?
Yeah, so I am originally from Prince George's County. I made my way to the Baltimore area by way of Towson University many, many years ago, and I have kind of just found a home and a place in Baltimore. I love Baltimore community. I love the city. I love the culture, and this is now my new home. And so I started the Be Org in 2014 after a project with my sorority. I'm an AKA, and some individuals from my sorority, they just encouraged me to really run with the leadership program that I had developed for middle school girls and kind of make it my own. And that is kind of how B got its founding. And it was really just others seeing qualities in me, seeing my drive and seeing, my ability to do programming and things like that and my passion for the youth that allowed them to continue to encourage me to expand on that. And that's kind of how I jumped into it. Nonprofit was never my first go-to. I never woke up and was like, yeah, I want to be a nonprofit executive. I want to be a founder. I want to be an entrepreneur. No, that was not the story at all. I kind of just fell into it. And now it's my passion. It's my job, yes, but it's my passion. So I'm thankful that I get an opportunity to live out my passion every day.
That's amazing. And you mentioned that like your sorority sisters and people saw qualities in you that you may not that may not have been amplified to you as much as they were to other people, because it's different when people are looking at our lives versus we can be confident in ourselves, but it's nice to have that outward perspective.
Yep, for
So
sure.
yeah. So even as children, we all have very distinct personalities. So I'm wondering, how would those who knew you best as a kid describe you, like from ages 5 to 18?
Oh, I still am very inquisitive. I always need an answer. I need to know why, how, when. And I will challenge you or challenge anyone until I get a concrete answer and explanation to anything. And
That's
so
right.
I just that's just how my mind works. Like I need to know what mechanism is in place to cause these things to happen, and that's probably where my love for science comes in, because I'm always just I'm into processes and into how things work in larger systems and things like that. So that's how my mind works, and that's where I actually get the most joy in running a business, putting systems in place as operationally, but then also on the STEM side, since my background is in science, being able to teach our young people that, right, and still being able to make connections to science concepts that they're learning in the classroom to things that we actually do in real life.
It's really interesting that you say that that's how you've always been, because clearly like that is what you are infusing into the lives of children through this organization. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, but I just think it's so wonderful how the importance of getting concrete answers and truths in the
Mm-hmm.
world, that is
Yeah.
just vital. When we talk about your career, you said that doing this sort of work has always been, like, being this person has always been your passion, and getting into STEM and things has always been something that you've been interested in. So let's talk about your career. You weren't always in the K through 12 learning space. So maybe from freshman year of college, I can barely remember freshman year, but if you can, great. From freshman year of college to the last day at your 9 to 5 before you became a founder and full time in your business. Can you walk us through that journey?
Yeah, so early on in my educational journey, I wanted to be a doctor. So I was pre med for a little while, and then that kind of switched to wanting to be a physician assistant because lifestyle and family and having, free time is important to me. Like I love to work, but I don't want that to be consuming and to be my life. And so I thought with being a physician assistant would allow me a little more flexibility to just live, right? And so that was kind of my goal. And in full transparency, I only applied to like 2 or 3 PA schools after undergrad, and I didn't get in, but I didn't have a mentor, and I did not have anyone to help me like really plan that next step of my educational journey, or to chart that career path for me or with me. So I kind of gave up on my dreams. And so when I talk to young people today, and because I didn't know what to do, like I didn't know where else to go.
Yeah.
I didn't know that it was common for people to not get in on their first time. I'm someone that's coming from lots of academic success and never really hearing no, right, from
Right.
admissions counselors or anything ever before. So I didn't know how to navigate that. I was like, well, okay, maybe this just isn't for me. So I started exploring other career paths and journeys and things like that. And so I tell young people all the time, don't settle for that no. Don't settle for your first rejection. That's just oftentimes a delay to you achieving your dreams and just a redirection, but it's never a no forever.
Hmm.
So I went and got a job right after college. In the STEM field, I worked in a lab creating cosmetics for a big pharmaceutical company that's local here. I won't name them, but it was a horrible, horrible experience. Boy, they treated kids out of college so bad.
Oh no.
So terribly. And I was turned off, and I did not have that human interaction that I needed. Like, I was in the lab working on, whatever I was making at the time, and it was fun. I enjoyed it, but I was like by myself and, working on whatever I was working on and not having anybody to talk to or connect with. I was like, oh, I can't do this. I
No.
needed the human interaction. And that was so terribly like missing from that job. So I stayed there for a while. And then I was like, well, maybe, I can go and get my master's and then really try to jump into maybe policy and regulations because I enjoy that. And so at the time, this is many, many years ago during the first recession, the first economic depression, many years ago, right after college. So all of the government jobs were like down. They were like literally not hiring anyone to do anything. Companies, had hit a hard financial times as well. So the job market was pretty terrible. And so I actually got a job with Baltimore County Government and Human Services. And I loved it because here we go. There's that human interaction I was missing. And during that time, I also went back to school full time and got my my master's degree in biotechnology. So I was working full time and going to school full time. It was a lot, but I was young at the time and ambitious, and it happened. It worked for me. And so from there, I kind of just stayed in county government, and just got promoted to different positions and started working more with community organizations and grant funded programs, which led me to a federal government job, working with the AmeriCorps. And that was like my dream job. I loved it. I was able to work with youth. I was still able to work with Baltimore community. I had a good position, and then we had a change in presidency, and they came in and cut the program significantly. And so myself and others got laid off. And this was 2017, and I was like heartbroken. I was like, I love this job. How dare you? Like, why don't you fund this program? It's
Right.
it's needed. It's widespread across the country. And I felt like the rug had got pulled from under me. And so at that time, I was also working my nonprofit, not full time, but long hours, right? So I had a full time job. I had the nonprofit. I would leave work during lunchtime to go to different schools to do programming. And my lunch breaks got long and long. And I found myself working, late hours to try to compensate for the time that I was out, taking off early, leaving early, staying late, and it got to be a lot. So in my mind, I was like, you know what, this is probably it this year. I think I can run my nonprofit full time. And then I got laid off, and I was like, okay, God, maybe you were telling me that I was dragging my feet, and you were ready for me to be in this area a lot sooner than what I thought I was ready for. And so I kind of in 2017 just hit the ground running, like middle of the year. That's when in the summer, we had our first summer camp in the Poppleton community in Baltimore. That community embraced and opened their arms and welcomed me in. I knew nothing about it, but I had connections to the social worker from University of Maryland there, and she was excited about our programming and the opportunity to provide, summer enrichment learning for the young people in that neighborhood. And so that's kind of how my journey has gone from school to, career choices and working the nonprofit full time. And here we are 7 years later, from the time that we were founded to this now being my full-time job.
I mean, there are almost no words. Because
it's a lot. I know.
it's just like, because what I hear is like how aligned everything was. You know what I mean? Like, and I know at the time it can be scary. Like, let's be real. You get laid off. You're like, oh, I was planning to start this thing down the line, but it looks like I'm going to have to start it now.
Yeah.
And I just think it's so special because it also speaks to how you're at your organization, you're training kids to have those skills where if life throws something at you and you got to switch gears,
Mm-hmm.
and get to work, then you can go ahead and do that. You
Yep.
have the skills to do that. So thank you for sharing. Um, and so when you went and started the summer camp, when you jumped into the summer camp, were you focusing on STEM during that summer enrichment program, or like what did that first activation look like?
It was focused on literacy and social awareness, and of course STEM because that's my passion. And so it was a lot of literacy though because we know summer learning loss is real, for our young people, and it was the funding was for a comprehensive camp, so touching on all areas, so STEM, literacy, arts, social
Okay.
awareness, all those good things, but I think reading is fundamental in all learning things, reading and math. And so we threw a lot of educational concepts, into our programming.
That's excellent. So it was well rounded, which is a theme that it literally we've only been talking for 15 minutes, but a theme that
Yeah,
continues
yeah.
to come up, and it's just so important. Um, so moving down the line from when you had that first camp activation to now you have the B organization. Can you tell us what was your ultimate inspiration for starting the organization? Like what was that moment where you were like, all right, Tonee, let's pull it together. What was the first step we have to take to get this started? And what makes the B organization different from other programs that put an emphasis on STEM skills?
Yeah, so we focus a lot on social and emotional learning. And that is any of those soft skills, as they're so affectionately called. Soft skills or life skills that you use day to day, which is like your communication or being self aware or how to work together on a team or even being a leader. And so oftentimes employers say that our students or students in general are just not prepared with those skills when they get to the workforce. They're struggling to work on teams. They're struggling to communicate effectively, and so we focus on those things, um, so that when the time comes, our students are able to pair their social skills with their technical skills and really skyrocket their success. And so for me, the B org started around a story of my line sister, her niece. She was struggling with the transition from to middle school, and I asked her, like, have you joined any clubs? Have you met any new friends? What are you doing? How are things? And she kind of just blew me off like any normal teenager, preteen would, like, ugh, whatever. And I was like, no, really, like you said that you were really interested in becoming an actress and you wanted to, you really wanted to pursue acting. Have you considered joining the drama club? And she's like, ugh, no. And long story short, she ended up saying that nobody in Baltimore ever makes it. Yeah. And so that was kind of like my reaction too. My heart was broken for her just to be so defeated
Yeah.
by the circumstances of her environment, really like just living in such a hard city and seeing so much struggle and violence and negativity around her. She could not see past that, and I just felt so heartbroken for her because like at that age you could not tell me that there was anything I could not achieve, and I wanted
Mm-hmm.
that for her, but she couldn't see past it. And so that's kind of how the mission came about, the organization came about, and where we really decided to focus in on like building students up, like really giving them those skills, that confidence, helping them see beyond just their four corners or their neighborhood or what's directly in front of them. So we're really big on exposure, and that's why I say social awareness, just like things that are going on in society, but just things that, different careers and different experiences, so that our students know that there's other things out there beyond what's going on in their neighborhoods.
That's so special because I was at a gathering a few weeks ago in Baltimore. For listeners, I too am in Baltimore. We're both in Baltimore. I'm from here. And I have a friend who's a singer, and she's doing what she has to do to get her name out there. And the guy literally interrupted her while she was talking, and he literally said, don't nobody make it out of this town.
Yeah.
and and it was crazy. I was just I literally, like, I put my drink down. Like, I was just like, whoa, like that is
Mm-hmm.
it. To have, for that mentality to be pervasive, there has to be something. We have to take a look at why is that the case, and how can we prevent that mentality in places like Baltimore and places around the world, that are, where people are growing up and landing as adults with that sort of mentality about the area that they're from. So I'm really, it's exciting, guys, what the B Org is doing to get kids at that age where their shape of their perspective of the world is being molded. When you're that age, K through 12, that is such an informative age as far as like who you become and
Mm-hmm.
what you believe about yourself. So we're grateful for the work that you are doing in that way. And so I had the opportunity to check out the newest thing that you are doing at the B Org. So you've teamed up with Black Girls Cook to launch something called the Food Playground. Um,
Yes.
and could you explain to us what the Food Playground is?
Yeah, so the food playground, this is probably one of my favorite programs. And it's because I get to infuse so much STEM into this learning space. So the food playground teaches young adolescent girls of color how to cook using STEM. So we literally go through a lab, an experiment, or science lesson every session, and then whatever they do in the lab, they replicate in the kitchen. So whether we're learning about emotions and why oil and vinegar doesn't mix, the culinary lesson will be to make a summer salad with a vinaigrette, like in
Nice.
a vinaigrette that they make from scratch. So we're teaching them healthy eating. We're teaching them life transferable skills. We also do some gardening, so they're doing some farm to table. And it's just an amazing, amazing program. And so for me, from my perspective from STEM, it's not often that our young Black girls see representation in the STEM industry. And the same thing for Chef Nicole and culinary. There's not that many Black chefs. I mean, it's a hard industry to survive in as a Black woman. And so putting those two together and allowing our young people the opportunity to see us, and to know that you can be successful. This is a career, like an attainable career that you can work towards. It's amazing. But for me, again, the science part is what really gets my heart going, because these are lessons that the kids learn in school, and to see them really being applied um, to real life things, and for them to experience them in hands-on capacity, like you can literally see their faces when the light bulb goes off, like, oh, now I understand this fraction conversion from one
Yeah.
fourth teaspoon to whatever. Or now I understand acids and bases, or it's those little things, like those aha moments for them that just like make my whole day. My whole face lights up. I'm like, yes, you get it. You understand. And so now when you go back to school, you do not have to be intimidated when you go to science and when you go to biology and when you go to math, because you understand that these are really things that happen in real life, and this is how you apply them. So that is my favorite program, for those very reasons.
When you talk about not being intimidated when you get back in the classroom, that is so important because, like, a lot of folks who have been kind enough to join us on the podcast just say the confidence is just such a key factor when it comes to children even believing that they can learn a concept.
Mm-hmm.
And even as us adults, like when we think about back when we learned how to drive, somebody could tell you driving is easy all day. But until you got behind that wheel and realized that little bit of pressure you put on that pedal is going to send that car flying forward, you're
Mm-hmm.
actually touching it and feeling it. And so I think the full cycle of what this the food playground is and does for children, and training their minds. It's just a very, very, very cool concept, and I'm excited to see how far it goes and where it goes, because I know I like to eat and I don't know anybody who doesn't, so
Yes.
so
It's
it'll be
we're
great.
in our second, actually, yeah, our second full year of the food playground.
Oh,
So
so you've been doing this for a minute now.
so we've done we did a pilot, and I like completely forget about 2020. Like, that's etched out of my memory
I
permanently.
know. That's probably why I'm thinking of everything. Like, since January 2021, I've been talking about everything as if the world didn't exist before 2021.
Seriously, me too. So we did this in 2019, and then in 2020 during the summertime, our program was all virtual for the food playground, and so we'll actually be virtual again this summer, 2021, with two cohorts at the end of July and early August. So it virtual, it was intimidating, but it ended up working out really well. The students got weekly grocery deliveries of all the perishable items that they needed to cook with or experiment with in lab, and it just worked out perfectly. So we'll be running that back again this year, and definitely looking forward to it.
That is so exciting. And so let's talk reality, and we're going to do a little bit of role play. So
Okay.
the B Org is a nonprofit. And for those who may not be too familiar, it means that uh, the organization really relies on donations, grants, gifts, etc., to fund its mission. So recently on Instagram, you broke down for us the challenge of persuading some funders that culturally responsive social emotional learning is important and also deserves funding. So let's say that I'm a funder, and my pen's on my checkbook, but I need a bit more convincing as to why culturally responsive social emotional learning needs funding and is important. Can you give me a 1 minute pitch for why I should give maybe a $250,000 grant or gift to the program?
Oh, you put me on the spot. Yes, let me think. Let me think. So, culturally responsive social emotional learning programming is essential to the long term success of our young people. It gives them an opportunity to actually relate to the facilitators, the educators that they are working with. You can't teach something if you've never lived it or experienced it. And so that is where we find the most success in our programming, is because it's true to who we are, it's true to our experiences, it's authentic to our culture. It's one thing to see things in a book, but it's another one to speak from your lived experiences. And so that's what we do with our programming. That's how we build the best relationships with our students. They can see our authenticity, our lived experiences, our respect for them, and just the strong bond in a relationship. And once you get past that and living your truth, then the educational part just comes so naturally after that. And so allowing our students that opportunity is pivotal. And if there is somebody out there listening with a 250K check, please hit me up.
You look, if you're listening to this and you are the person with the $250,000 check, or someone,
Yes.
you hear the good work that's being done. Seriously, guys, we have to make sure that children are really getting these full circle life skills. And so, Tonee, when it comes to, I know the conversations can be sensitive sometimes, but do you find that when it comes to funders that they may be on board until you mention the culture responsive social emotional learning piece, or like when I just wonder, like, is it okay? I'm fine with everything else, but I have a problem with this piece being in there. Can you take it out, sort of thing?
No, if we get to the conversation with the funder, then they I think they're opening their eyes to understanding that there is a void in this area, and who better to do it than those who are closest to the work,
Mm-hmm.
and or closest to the problem. And I think the message is finally resonating, right? Like, last year
Great.
was hard for so many reasons, living in that dual pandemic of, racial injustice and or the heightened awareness of racial injustice, because we know that it didn't just start last year. But the heightened awareness of those social issues, coupled with the pandemic, really shone a light on all of the issues, and really spotlighted some of the opportunities for organizations who are doing this work, like to really come to the forefront. And so if you get down to a conversation with the funder, that is, you're in a good position. But then you have to hope that that funder is able to relay that message or that information to the board. And so project officers, I'm going into a quick lesson in philanthropy, but
Go right
project
ahead.
officers or program officers, grant officers, they are oftentimes not the ones to make the final decision. The boards of the foundations are. And that is where the issue comes in, because those are the people who control the purse and can control the decisions, but they are not always the ones who are closest to the work and are very removed from the reality of the needs of the community, because you're talking about people who are sitting on hundreds and thousands and millions of dollars making decisions for people who are in very impoverished areas. They
Right.
don't have a clue what they need. And if they aren't hearing the voice of the people or the voice of the children or executives like myself or even the program officers at the foundation, then they don't typically, it's hard for them to make a decision based on that. They many times make the decision based on the organizations, the larger organizations that have the hundreds of $1,000s of marketing budget, who they see regularly in the papers and on the news and on the news channels, and whose stories are amplified because they already have the money to do that. And
Right.
so if you can't get through that red tape, then you probably will not get the dollars. And so that's where we are now, is in a position to we're trying to position ourselves to amplify our story and make our voice really heard and really shine some light on the problems, but not only the problems, because everybody knows those, but the solutions that we've created to remedy some of these issues, and really put our young people in position to have them share their truths and their success stories so we can continue to fund and support our programs.
And if so, you guys are, getting through the red tape, you're sharing your story, you're, continuing to fund your program through, through larger funders. But what if everyday people just wanted to support your mission? What if everyday people just wanted to get involved? Is there a way that folks like myself or, a mom or anybody could, who might not be able to write a $5,000 check, can support what you all are doing?
Yeah, our website, thebeorg.com, thebeorg.com, or our Instagram, thebeorg, is the best way to connect with us. Or if you want to make a donation, you can do so there. There's links on both of those pages to be able to donate. And no gift is too small. We we love all of our donors, because you did not have to contribute. You don't have to contribute your money to us. We say we're doing good things, but you can contribute where your heart desires. And so we are appreciative of all of those individuals who do sow these seeds into us. Just know that the money is always going directly back to the students. Right now, we are looking to fund laptops for our Be Virtual program that allows students to learn to code for virtual reality, and they actually do code our social and emotional learning curriculum. So it gives our students an opportunity to increase their learning retention rate by giving them like an experiential learning platform. And so we're looking for money to fund those for our young people that don't have computers in the home and have to give their computers back to the schools at the end of the school year, and close that digital equity divide that is so prevalent in the city. So yes, donations of any size are always appreciated.
Yes, thank you for letting us know how we can support and donate. And I think that's really cool what you're talking about, the Be Virtual aspect. Really really closing up that tech gap and making sure all sorts of resources are available to children to do what they can do, do what they're capable of. And I think what's really cool about your organization is not only do you do that, prioritizing the tangible, but you also prioritize the intangible, things like character. And
Mhm.
when I went on your website and I saw your program things, one thing that really stood out to me was that you prioritize character education. So I'm wondering, when did you come to the realization that character education is something that children are in need of, and how do we begin to educate children on character?
Yeah, so that's a part of that social and emotional learning. And so we follow the CASTLE framework. If for educators out there, it's just a widely adopted blueprint for social and emotional learning. It touches on a couple different components, and we fit character education into that. And so, because we want to give students an opportunity to build character at earlier ages, our character education lessons are available for students in grades 2 through 5. That's primarily the students that we work with in the after school time space. And so, um, a part of developing your character, it requires you to be self-aware. And so, being self-aware, socially aware, it's just super important. So the earlier that they can get those lessons and those activities and even conversations with parents or those family engagement touch points about being self-aware and knowing who you are and what your triggers are and how to work through those, it supports your character development early on. It helps build a strong foundation for you as a person. So we love to do those activities with our young people, and you'll see us doing a lot of that this summer as well, with some of our school sites. But yes, character education starting at grade 2 for us is pivotal.
That's amazing. And I just want to take a few moments to let's zoom out a bit. When we're talking about education as a whole, what do you think the world is taking too long to realize when it comes to the way that we educate children, and how are you changing that?
Oh my goodness, that students learn differently. Um, and you have to be able to speak to the different learning styles of students in order to really help them excel. All students are not auditory learners. All students are not visual learners. All students are not, kinesthetic learners, but all students cannot learn sitting down, right? And
Right.
so, even with this virtual learning that we have going on, we've seen that there are some students that learn better at home in front of the computer where they're not distracted by everything else in the classroom. And so I think that the education system is going to have to do more to accommodate different learning styles, to customize learning styles for our students. It's not a one size fits all. And so I think they need to take a better look at that, so that our students can really excel um, the way that we know that they can.
Absolutely. And the classroom, what happens in schools and what happens in classrooms is so important. Like it can't be discarded. That's where kids mainly come for their education. And with that, education largely comes from the home as well. When we talk about, kids have, no matter what happens in school, they got to go back home. And parents are busy. COVID-19, like we just talked about earlier, flipped everyone's normal upside down. And parents are, quite frankly, exhausted. It can be exhausting. I'm not a parent, but I have lots of friends who are, and I'm right there with you as far as what I can imagine you're going through. So, what's one way that a parent can begin to encourage their child to be, just to do, to express themselves, even on those days when the parents are on E, when they have nothing left, when they're just like, I want my child to still spend this day, learning and growing, but I can't. I'm too tired to be involved. Like, what can people do?
I would just honestly encourage parents to take it a step further. Like, I know the gas tank feels empty, but like sometimes hit the fumes so that you can have those thoughtful conversations with your child, and really open up and listen to them, because children tell you exactly what they need, or they will show you what they need. And so just being open to having conversations about things that are going on in the world, um, not asking closed-ended questions like, oh, did you have a good day? But tell me the best part about your day, or what was the hardest part about your day. From those conversations, you can learn a lot and really troubleshoot, or support, add extra supports where you need them. But for parents that literally don't have an extra second in the day, there are lots of great tools online. Khan Academy, for I know a lot of parents reach out because their students are struggling with math and science, and I always direct people to Khan Academy. They have the best videos for walking students through so many different um, educational areas. And then making sure that you maintain contact with their teachers, or other support staff in the school. I know Baltimore City Schools always has community schools. Most schools have a community school coordinator. Um, and they have extra resources available, or they can connect you to community organizations like ours that can provide additional supports where you may not be able to. um, but lean on your community, lean on your teachers, lean on that support staff, and really focus on like building a village for the students, because we know parenting is hard, especially single parenting is hard. But there's mentoring programs and good community organizations out here that are ready to stand in and fill in the gap.
I was talking to a teacher recently about the different resources that are available in schools, and she was saying that a lot of parents do not come and lead on those community coordinators, or don't come and ask about the resources. And I think it could be in large part because folks don't even know that they can go and ask. But now you heard it from Tonee, y'all. You can go to your child's school, you can tell the educators or the community coordinators what's going on. Ask, even if you have to go in or email somebody and say, this is what I'm going through, what do you have to help me, how can I be helped? There are folks in place who can do that, so thank you for sharing. And so Tonee, this is the last question. I'm wondering, for us adults, how can we begin to peel back the layers of socially imposed expectations that we ourselves are dealing with, and simply be ourselves, grow into our true selves?
um you have to sit with yourself and see and analyze your feelings. Sit in those hard moments, like if there's if you've had a long day, or you may be going through something, like journaling, writing those things down, and actually sitting in those emotions and thoughts, um, to figure out where the pain points are, and try to map it back to the source and the cause, and then figure out how you can improve from there. Leaning on friends, leaning on family, being really socially aware, and being like gentle and patient with yourself, because there's a lot going on in the world. It really is. But leaning into those uncomfortable feelings and those uncomfortable places is a good start.
Well, thank you so much. You heard it, guys. It's great advice. Be patient with yourself, sit with yourself, and really lean into those emotions that you are feeling. The things that are around you can be the things that really help you to activate what you're supposed to be doing or want to do, and we can peel back those layers of those socially imposed expectations. And even as adults, after all that we've been through, blossom into better versions of ourselves. And so, Tonee, thank you so much for joining us. And I'd love for you to tell listeners where they can learn more about your organization and really get involved.
Yeah, so thebeorg.com for all things programming, donations, contact. That's THEBEORG.com. The Beorg on Facebook and Instagram, THEBEORG. Or if you want to send me an email, I'll be happy to connect with you there. Thebeorg@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys. You know where to find her. You know where to get in touch with the program. She drops so many wonderful resources. So please make sure you share this with everyone you know. And if you are a parent, educator, or innovator, use this wisdom that Tonee's dropped today to do what you need to do. And you know what it is, especially when you sit with yourself, just like she told you. So, Tonee, thank you so much for joining me. We truly appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Bye-bye. So what'd you think? How will you take what you learned today on the EdGap Evolution podcast to make sure that more children and families know that they have more options for building a magnificent future? If you like what you heard and want to get notified when the next episode goes live, please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll notify you when the next episode is out. Don't forget to check the show notes where I share information on today's guest, and yes, we do have a website. You can always pop in on us at www.edgapevolution.com. Again, I'm Mariah Phillips, and I leave you with this. Embrace the evolution, y'all.